would like to invite on stage Rahul Shivshankar, Editor-in-Chief and Editorial Director. Time's now to deliver the opening address. Let's give the man a huge, huge round of applause.
You've just heard Kapil Dev on life, love, and leadership. What's there left for me to say? But I will attempt. How are you all there, Goa Festival? How's it going? Hot? Hot or chilled out in Goa? Very hot. Very hot. Let's hear it from you guys. Are you excited to be here? Wonderful. I'm excited to be here. I last visited Goa when I was 20. Yeah, 20. It was the height of the rave culture. And I thought I was going to be partying my sides out, but there was a problem. I was visiting Goa with my 65-year-old aunt and my mother, who was just about that age. So there was no partying. And now when I'm back, 28 years later, I'm here with my 9-year-old daughter and my wife, and let me tell you, there's going to be very little partying, especially not the rave kind. That said, I'm very thankful to be here this afternoon and very, very humbled that all of you have taken the time out to be here to listen to me, to talk about the art of being a leader. Now, as you know, after the BARC ratings were reinstated, Times Now has continued its run at the top. But I'm now going to say something counterintuitive. I'm going to be brutally honest with you, and I'm going to be upfront, uncompromisingly so, and I'm going to tell you that while we are flattered, while we believe that this is a vindication of our journalism, and we value your support, which is captured in these BARC ratings, I have to say that it is easy today to be a leader in the ratings game, because some channels have made it a scandalous mugs game. Others have begun to sell a ridiculous approximation of the news, a go bananas version of it, blurring the lines between fact and fiction. Just recently, and I'm not going to beat around the bush, I'm going to take some examples. You don't want to be listening to me talking about platitudes and impressions. I'm going to tell you what I saw. I saw on a leader channel, and I'm sure you might have seen it too, a leader channel, an anchor floating above the battle-scarred cityscape of a bombed-out Ukrainian city. Now, what's wrong with that, you'd say? Obviously, they want to bring to you the war, raw, into your drawing rooms, into your bedrooms. But this anchor was floating in a virtual helicopter, a video games wala helicopter. You know, the ones that they make on CG animation. And if you looked closely, just behind the anchor, you saw the dashboard of this helicopter in the cockpit. And it was lighting up like this periodically every 30 seconds, scratching my head, and I was wondering what's going on till the anchor said, "We're under fire, we're being attacked." On another news leader, not one, not two, not three, but 13 anchors, kid you not, 13 anchors stood on a makeshift balcony. It's like one of those old theaters where you have balcony seats which are quite rickety and creaky. It was just like that, 13 of them, and gesticulating like I am right now, wildly saying that nuclear war has broken out, and at the bottom of the screen there were these crazy mushroom clouds, and you could barely see the anchors. They were just these little, sorry to say, midgets. I'm sorry. I'm not being politically correct. But nonetheless, they looked vertically challenged. You see, we have commoditized news to such an extent that it's no longer news, it's plain contempt. It's turning tragedy into spectacles. It's a mutant variant of the news that's infectious, and we are told every viewer is happy to catch this mutant variant. I'm not surprised. After all, who doesn't like to watch a freak show, if only to feel disgusted by it? Now, Times Now could descend, and I'm being direct here. We could descend to the level of a freak show, or we could, I should say, ascend to it by getting on top of some make-believe video game helicopter, turning serious issues like death, desensitize them like they do in video games. But we won't do it. You see, at Times Now, every editor that leads every Times network property holds himself to a high standard. You see, there are so many internal checks at Times Now of our own selves, including our conscience, that we will never descend into that pit that commodifies death. And this is why Times Now is a leader, because it displays leadership. Leadership goes beyond numbers. It's a demonstrable quality, and it cannot be defined by a matrix of numbers. You can't pick it up. So what does demonstrating the Times Now way mean? And I'm not going to answer this. Again, in the abstract, I'm going to take some examples. My first example focuses on how Times Now responds to a mistake or a potential crisis that has implications for our very brand. Has anyone here heard of a certain Mr. Daniel McAdams? Has anyone heard of Daniel McAdams? If you have, raise your hands. I'm not going to be angry with you. I want you to tell us. Have you heard of Daniel McAdams? Say yes, no. Well, for those amongst you who may not know, who haven't raised their hands, who haven't wanted to offend me by saying yes, let me play this clip for you. It's not too long. Let's play it out. The Daniel McAdams clip. Let's play it out. Watch for yourselves what happens here. Bodhan Nahale, first to you. Is this an empty threat?
Let me just say, I don't like your editorializing an anti-Western position. Try and be objective. Imagine China had bombed you and it was your cities that were under fire, or Pakistan. You would be sounding a totally different tune. And remember that China is backing Russia up at this moment. You represent the biggest democracy in the world, yet you are so biased at a time of war, huge war crimes being committed that we haven't seen anywhere, but in Europe, certainly since Hitler. And we have a Hitler there who is a threat to the entire world because we don't know about his sanity. He's destroying Ukraine. Tomorrow he could destroy all of us, including you, India.
Do you disagree? Do you disagree with Daria Kalaniuk, the anti-corruption activist who took on Boris Johnson and called him effete?
The other guest sounds hysterical, so I don't know how to respond to what he's saying.
No, it's clearly India that's effete. It's India that's effete.
Daniel
it's
McAdams,
India, not Boris Johnson.
just take a bit of a chill pill. I didn't even address the question to you. Relax. Calm down.
I don't want to relax. My country is at war.
Well, Mr. McAdams, if you are so concerned, about Ukrainians, then hang on. Mr. McAdams, if you're so concerned about if you're so concerned about Ukraine, get off the fence and send your forces and put boots on the ground. Don't lecture us here in India, okay? I'm not going to hear your lecture. And if you have really problems, go tell the US President, Mr. Mr. Biden who flashes. No, hang on. Who flashes his fancy credentials. No, don't, Mr. McAdams tonight. Don't, Mr. McAdams tonight. Play the cat's paw for the West here. Do not do that. We have no. Hang on. You ask those Afghans. You ask those Afghans what they have gone through falling off planes because you dumped them. You ask the African nations because you dumped them. You go ask millions and millions of Iraqi citizens because you dumped them. You people and your colonial agenda, sir, has wrecked the South, has wrecked the East, and don't sit here and lecture us. Don't sit here and lecture us, Mr. McAdams. We shut him down.
I'm not talking. It's the other guy who's talking. I haven't been able to say a word.
Yeah, absolutely. The man has gone completely ballistic. And if he feels so strongly, he should go and fight alongside Ukrainians who are being killed.
I have not, dear host, I have not said a word yet. I don't know why you're yelling at me.
I'm not yelling at you. I'm talking about Mr. McAdams. I'm talking about Mr. McAdams.
I am Mr. McAdams.
Oh.
I am Mr. McAdams, and I haven't said a word, so stop yelling at me.
Okay, sorry. I got that confused.
Ukrainian guy who's going nuts, okay? Not me.
Yes, I got that. That's Boden Nahalo, the chief editor of Kyiv Post. Sorry, Mr. McAdams, sorry. Thank you.
Microphone.
Yeah, one second. There's been a confusion here, but nonetheless.
There's been a big confusion.
Boden Nahalo giving us a lecture. Okay, fair enough. Kyiv Post and former senior UN official giving us a lecture. General Bakshi, would you like to respond to Boden Nahalo? You see, I'm red. I'm actually red in the face. It's deeply embarrassing. It's embarrassing for me and embarrassing. It's an embarrassing reflection. A channel of Times Now's quality shouldn't have got the basics wrong. This video was viewed, including by all of you, or most of you in this room, by 20 million people across the globe. It's true. It's true. Every international paper worth its salt, media organization, The Guardian, The Telegraph, The Post, the New York Times, they did this story. They really did this story, and they buried me. And they took a few pot shots at Times Now and India's journalism and this, that, the other. Now, it could have been true that it could have been a lot worse. I could have been caught on camera spiking a story from a sponsor for money, and editors have done that. I could have been caught trying to influence the ratings, and that's happened too. I could have been caught on a tape fixing appointments in government, and that has also happened. While I'm not guilty of all these things, I am clearly guilty of a lot, as you just saw. Now, when it went viral, we had a choice. We could have brushed it off under the carpet, never acknowledged the moment. After all, the brand Times Now would endure. Yes, it would be a little battered, a little bruised. It would stagger, but it would not fall. It would not keel over, because I dare say, it's almost too big to fail. But then we said, what if? You see, what if? Can't take things for granted. So we decided against it. Instead, I called Mr. McAdams back just over 24 hours later. And this is what I said to him. It's a short clip. We'll play that out. I'm delighted, first and above all, to welcome back Mr. McAdams on popular demand. I'm sure you are aware, Mr. McAdams, that you've become somewhat of an instant cult figure here in India, and for many hours you were the top trend across the nation. The more impressionable in my country have even changed their Twitter display pictures to your image in homage. This is a Je suis McAdams moment for them. Not bad for a man who didn't even get to speak a word. In a sense, Mr. McAdams, you've come very close to emulating a certain legend who moved the nation without speaking a word, sometimes for days at an end. So there is power in silence. And I'm learning that. For the opportunity, of course, of bringing some joy in these grim times to the world, I and my most contrite show producer are thankful to you. Indeed, what would we be without you, Mr. McAdams, today? I am hearing from a section of Indians most upset at the state of Indian journalists that they are intending to set up the McAdams School of Journalism. While many of us are in need of reform, don't, however, and this is my advice to you, contribute any funds to it, because some invested in this endeavor have been known to misappropriate donations. But I promise not to stand in your way tonight, and so begin by asking you, yes, Mr. McAdams, well and truly you, my first question. What's made Putin show such little regard for nuclear red lines, and has the West lost the capacity to stop him?
Well, I'm going to take a couple of chill pills before I answer that. But this is a war, and this is a war that's progressed very, very quickly for the past week.
Well, you see, I can go from embarrassment to smiling in, what was it, about 1.5 minutes. But look, one of the important lessons of leadership, making amends is the surest way of pursuing excellence, of pursuing that no rating system can measure: credibility, honesty, yes, and integrity. It's the stuff of leadership, of setting benchmarks. And Times Now leads by setting benchmarks, ladies and gentlemen. That's what we do, and that's what we hold ourselves proud for and of. Now I come to my second point. Now pay attention to this, because Anup Vishwanathan, a colleague of mine, came up and whispered this into my ears. And you know that I can be quite combative. So leadership means, he said, being competitive without focusing too much on competition or compulsion. Times Now doesn't allow the competition tail to wag the editorial dog, so to speak. We don't allow the compulsion tail to wag the editorial dog in our meetings. Times Now does what others won't dream of doing. It travels the road less traveled. And once again, I'm going to back up what I'm saying with a concrete example, and I hope that it left an impression on you. Last April, as Delta was dancing, I was in a conference call with my colleagues. Now, you know these Zoom calls, they can be chaotic at the best of times. Every few seconds, however, this was very different. Every few seconds, there were updates, urgent ones that you don't want to get these kind of updates. If you have some empathy, these were updates about our colleagues who are hanging between life and death. How is Srinjoy? Will he pull through tonight? Has he got enough oxygen? Did he get remdesivir? And there was a time when we thought we lost him. How is Sunil Sam? How is his mother doing? Sadly, we lost her. Pranesh, how is he? How is his wife? How is his mother-in-law? He lost his mother-in-law. It went on, and there were 20, 30 of our colleagues that were hanging between life and death. I kid you not, ladies and gentlemen. And then we had you, the viewer, who was gasping for air, running after medicines, hospital beds, connections, trying to get that one last remaining steroid, remdesivir, to give to your loved one, your mother, your sister, your brother, your child. It was devastating. But you know what our politicians were doing at that time? And I'm being honest because we were honest on air, and we asked this question under a caption called Janta Mange Jawab, and no channel did that. They were busy campaigning. They were out there campaigning for the elections, campaigning to win power, serve themselves, not us. Yes, they'll say that they were, giving a leg up to democracy. Could have waited, it could have waited. That's when we decided that if we focused on election issues, on debates, on the results, on the campaigns, and fed this ego, we would give the politicians the oxygen of publicity at the expense of these life and death issues. We would be complicit in the murder by apathy of citizens, of the people that we, as the media, are sworn to serve. And Times Now is your voice. That's what we say every day. I decided to blank out the coverage of the elections in 5 states, and my CEO supported me even though we had sponsorship deals. And let me tell you, there was a huge internal debate. It wasn't as if, we were on some do-gooding high. There were people who said, political news channels, what do they live and breathe for? Politics. We do. We're number one because no one covers politics like us. We call ourselves India's election news headquarters. Channels launch just before elections because they want to excel and capture the mind's eye of the viewer. But my viewer, his mind's eye was being captured by his loved one choking without oxygen. I had to reconcile that. Should have been a very easy choice. Then we thought of politicians and their, I'm sorry to say, bloated egos. They would have said, "Itni jurrat hui, Times Now boycotted. They don't think we're anything." Luckily, they didn't. They also took it maturely, but not maturely enough to call off their campaign. Nonetheless, even the Madras High Court ticked them off, and of course, the Madras High Court wrongly got a ticking off from a higher court of the land. There were others who said, "This is too sanctimonious, too preachy. Go do your job. Come on." That's what we did. And then we reminded ourselves of those immortal words that Anup has put in this speech. Leadership means being competitive without focusing too much on competition or compulsion. Leadership means having the courage of conviction. That's what Kapil Dev was talking about. No plan B. That's what he said. And we decided to blank out the coverage of 5 state elections last year. This was my message. Listen to it.
Viewers, our nation faces its biggest health emergency in recent memory. Times Now, in keeping with its ethos of tracking the biggest national story, has decided to keep COVID news as its main priority, suspending our special election coverage on May 2 and beyond. As part of our coverage, viewers can expect COVID-related news reports, the latest on the status of the universalized vaccination drive, information on helplines, and can interact with healthcare and mental wellness experts on the channel.
I mean, think about it. How could Times Now allow itself to become part of a horse race where the jockeys are interested only in using power to serve themselves, and perhaps when the time comes they will help us out, where they spent 60 days campaigning when they could have stopped the dance of death, and the dance of death did happen. It did happen. Once the campaign ended, all those states, someone used the word TRP, that we are TRP obsessed. You see, for an English news channel, the South is a big market. It's an English-speaking market. It's not a Hindi-speaking market. It's an English-speaking market. And obviously, in each of these states, there was death. Kerala, Tamil Nadu, Bengal. As I told you, the courts were shocked. So how could we, at Times Now, let our conscience die in the moment when our viewers were dying in their hospital beds? Do you agree? Do you agree? Again, let me say, no metric can measure journalism that puts people first, conviction first, not compulsion. Others didn't. They could have followed our lead, but many eager news channels failed to shoulder their responsibility. In fact, there were some editors who came out and tweeted, and I'm sure there were some amongst you who might have read those tweets where they said Times Now didn't do the election because the BJP was losing and they knew. You see, So they they wanted to save the BJP its blushes. Ladies and gentlemen, how devious is that? How positively irresponsible, how petulantly competitive is that? And that brings me to a related third principle of leadership. I can name these editors, you know. I won't do it. I'm not that type of gutter snipe. I won't do it. Third important point of leadership. Stand with the public interest at all costs, whatever the cost. Sometimes we have to be more than mere news people. People see us as friends, protectors, amplifiers, support systems. And as someone responsible for triggering words to demand action, it's called activism. Now you see, a lot of people tell you in journalism school, don't talk about activism, you're not activists. Yes, we are. We focus on issues, we should be activists. In a country where so many of us are apathetic, someone needs to wake up, and we do. In late 2017, we did. Because I remember we were in the newsroom and ANI was feeding these videos. Everyone knows ANI. ANI is India's video news agency, and they were feeding these visuals. And I remember the editorial team, Navika, everybody, we were all sitting together around a table, and we saw this lady in an ambulance, and she steps out of the ambulance. She could barely walk. She was staggering, falling. She was supported by a paramedic and an orderly, perhaps the ambulance driver, I don't know, but she had to walk several, 5 or 6 blocks, kilometers, call it what you want to, because you know why? Because her ambulance was stopped because of a cavalcade of a chief minister. The doctors marveled at her resolve, and later on when she recovered, I think ANI fed, again, bites a little later, this, that, the other, and we heard her speak. This Braveheart subsequent interview triggered a response within me, within our newsroom, and we made it our mission to ensure that no one should have to suffer this indignity again. How many times have we seen lives snuffed out in an ambulance because the drivers on the road are callous enough not to notice the blinking blue and red lights, the beacons of hope that is crying out, signaling to them to open up the path to life? We decided that we would report every and any story where ambulances were held up. We were relentless. We moved this into mainstream news. This was not a CSR activity for us. This was not something that you do once a year. You bring a couple of celebrities, you do a telethon. Is that the word, telethon? We didn't do any telethons. We did this as news, day in, day out, whenever. And I remember my colleague Nikunj here. He would assign reporters all across the country to find these cases. The Path to Life campaign was born. It was born out of pure activism, what they tell you not to do. It had a straight message told with a sense of dread. Watch this message. Watch this.
Sure, we will do it. Sure. Kane, baby. Kane. And no headphone.
In the golden hour of a medical emergency, a life waits on the brink.
Driver uncle!
When on the road, the split-second decision makes all the difference. Here, acknowledge, decide. Make way for an ambulance. Create the path to life. Be the change.
Ladies and gentlemen, I'm not going to be too long, but our campaign forced legislative changes. And now, at least in theory, if you ignore the ambulance, you could go to jail. There are other principles of leadership that I want to dwell on very, very briefly. Straight talk. The government did a huge favor, for example, by passing the 3 farm laws, not going into how it was done, etc., etc. It was out there. Straight talk, frankly speaking, being upfront, meant that it was our responsibility as broadcasters to tell the message that this particular law contained, a series of laws contained, very honestly, very openly. When a reform is vital to our food security and the future well-being of the nation, of our children, can we allow it to be trampled by tractors plowing the fields of politics? No, we cannot. We do a disservice. The government, in my book, made a mistake by pulling them back. They shouldn't have repealed them, but that's a different story altogether, and this is not why we're here. We're talking about straight talk. When you know it's right, say it. But make sure whatever you say is based on verified fact. We value being sure over being sensational. You may not think so, but it is true. Nothing is worth it if you don't have the facts right. After all facts are the basis of strong, good arguments. And they help our viewers get closer to the truth. And therefore, we say, don't sell. We put the facts out there before you, before each one of you, to make up your own minds and take your own decisions. Because you are our everyday judges. As you can see, leadership is simply the ability of doing the right thing at the right time for our viewers, for you. A loyal, discerning viewer is of intense importance to an advertiser also. In all our years of business, we have been excellent partners to our stakeholders. We are highly competitive when it comes to earning the trust and support of viewers and advertisers, and they respond to us. That, ladies and gentlemen, is probably the greatest acknowledgement of leadership. I thank you for attending, for listening to me. I hope I haven't imposed on your time. Thank you very much, and I hope we've tried to explain ourselves a little more to you today. Thank you. Have a great night. Go to the rave.
Well, I have to say, Mr. Shivshankar, Times Now has probably set another benchmark today with those powerful words. Clearly, very, very pertinent topics and points raised. Let's give the man a huge, huge round of applause, please. That was fantastic.